You are now tuned in, exploring the poetic depths of ancient metaphysics with Rev Sahai, the poetic metaphysician. Spell-breaking, mind-shaking, soul reclamation. Sahaja the doctor, the healing one. Sahaja says. Hey, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Sundays with Sahaja. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sahaja L. And before we get going, make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to click that bell so that you can be the first to know and grow. Speaking of growing, head on over to RevSahaja.com. Join my VIP list so that you can be the first, the early bird to get the worm that is the narcissist, the alchemist, soul activation framework. In this course, which will be released within the next few weeks, we will be diving into the laws of metaphysics that allow us to break the spell of the narcissist. We are going through these steps to metaphysical healing, soul activation, and spiritual luxury in the form of our physical health, mental health, and our finances. Money, y'all. Well, before we get started, I do want to go ahead and shout out some of the members, the most active members of the Matriarch Circle. So once you join that VIP list, you'll get a link to Metaphysical Healing. And that Metaphysical Healing link will automatically make you a member of this community. And the top members of this community that I want to shout out in this week's episode, Sundays with Sahaja, are Miss Carla, Miss Teresa, Imani, and Sister Navigator, y'all. I also want to highlight and thank the men, express gratitude for those who are also equally a part of metaphysical healing. You guys are the key to us ascending our consciousness beyond the 3D so that we can raise our vibrations and live above the constructs of dis-ease. Now, today's episode is going to dive a little bit into the root of this dis-ease, y'all. Because dis-ease, as we know from the Bible, is sinful. You get dis-ease by being sinful. Sin is something that we are said to be born into. So it doesn't matter who you are, how great you are, if you don't abide by the Lord's rules, then you are due retribution. But I want to ask a question to the audience. What even is sin? Can we define it? Do we know what it looks like? Because of all the evils of the world, the people who we like to think of as the elite, the rich, and the wealthy, they not reaping no repercussions. They're not getting their lashes as we know it. It seems like the more that they work towards destroying the world, the more they rack up in assets, the more welfare they're getting, because we know that this current administration is depriving us all from it. So I want to focus a little bit about the narcissistic spell of this thing that we call sin. I was having a conversation with the matriarch in my family yesterday, and we know that a lot of the elders in our communities are the ones primarily responsible for furthering anchoring us into the 3D by way of religion and telling us that our ancestors were demonic and convincing us that the key to wealth is giving the church all our money and time, of course. But as it was explained at the round table that we were at, is the state of the world is because of our state of lack. Now, that state of lack they're referring to is the sin, us being disconnected from God or not being able to find God within. Now, we know when it comes to religion, we're not talking about us actually being Jesus and God within. Religious people think that God is an external force that exists outside of them. But that's what we're gonna take some time in this episode to fully understand. Because sin, if you break down the word sin exists in three dimensions currently. Sin meaning destruction, meaning your disconnection, your disobedience. Sin meaning without, meaning being emotionally, physically, or spiritually detached from something. And sin also algebraically being the sin or sinusoidal waves, which essentially just our frequency. That is essentially our frequency. Because when we speak, we vibrate. When we breathe, we vibrate. The earth itself vibrates. Everything is pulsating. Everything is vibration. Those vibrations, they spiral in a rhythmic pattern that we call sinusoidal waveforms. Okay? Now, what I want to focus on, though, because I'm going to bring this all together, because the church isn't always so far off. It's just their perspective of how to make the word relevant. So, metaphysics is what bridges it all together. Now, first, I want to start with this scripture here, Psalm 51:5, right? Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. So, in the book of Psalm, as well as all the other relevant scriptures that refer to us being born absolutely helpless, it's telling us that not only are we born into sin, but the sin was the mere thought of our existence. Let's break this down just a little bit, because if in sin we were conceived, then that means that the original sin is has to do with reproduction in some way. So in my book, I write about how the original sin was not Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit, but the original sin was their physical integration. The original sin was the mother forgetting the magic of her creation. Where y'all think I'm going with this? See, before man, by way of the Y chromosome, existed, the universe or the world itself was primarily women. And I say primarily because there were other species and organisms here with her. So, her being able to reproduce or replicate her cells to create another version of her in human form is what we know of in nature as parthenogenesis. So, her losing access to this science on how to divide herself without intercourse was the first sin. The first sin was her forgetting who she was within. And then along came Adam. So, I want to break this down as well, because now that we are in the third dimension, there are two realms of thinking. This is the split between heaven and the lake of fire after the rapture. Heaven and hell are just splits in consciousness. It all has to do with your perspective. Now, we like to think of the fifth dimension as being the higher realm of consciousness and the third dimension as being the lower form of consciousness. Now, mathematically, the third dimension is just a lower frequency because in order for you to materialize into physical form, there had to be a slowing of your frequency. I bring this up all the time. If you think of yourself as a water-based being, then water, once you slow those molecules down, become ice. They densify into matter. You would be the ice form of the water. The cosmos, or space as we know it, is the higher form. It's the higher frequency. This is synonymous with 5D. It's not a physical place that you go. It's not somewhere that you have to leave your body to experience. Your ability to navigate between dimensions is about the density of your melanin. And melanin, in this regard, is consciousness. Neuromelanin, that is. Because I don't want to start any arguments on you or phenomelanin types. Because we're not talking about the skin. We are talking about the mind. Constructs or levels of consciousness. Okay, now with that being said, there are two ways to look at the Adam and Eve story. A lot of people don't talk about this because we tend to focus on the fact that Adam is symbolic to the atoms of Eve's DNA cells, right? So on the physical level, that's exactly what it represents. On a spiritual level, we take the physical or literal sense of the Adam and Eve story and we flip it. Because Adam and Eve were already taught by religion as literal figures. Eve was taken from Adam's rib. So Eve being taken from Adam's rib means that Eve is an aspect of Adam that resides within. On the contrary, if you look at it in the realm that we default to in metaphysics, Adam is the atoms within Eve's cells. So the masculine and the feminine are both states of consciousness. Either way you look at it, it has to do with going within. Keep that in mind. Because the key to you being redeemed of sin is you being able to reconnect with the true self, the God or the Christ that is within. Now, with that being said, her forgetting the science of how to procreate without a man was the original sin, the forgetting. This sin, once you layer it down, if we think of this chronologically, the first sin was her forgetting this science of parthenogenesis. That turned into the sin of forgetting that you too are Jesus. Now we think of Jesus as a man that we don't have access to in the physical dimension. You absolutely have access to Jesus because Jesus exists within you. Jesus is a state of consciousness. Okay, now let's move on from this. So once we dive deeper, we get to Romans 5:12. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. So religiously, because Adam and Eve were disobedient, then we all have to suffer the consequences of somebody else's actions. Now, mind you, these somebodies existed centuries before us. Why is this even relevant? Okay, let's break this down a little bit, because sin entered the world. If those of you who have seen my video on the origins of trauma, you understand the process of incarnation. The process of incarnation, as I just previously stated, involves your molecules being slowed to a densified state. Now, that densified state, if you think of something having density, being dense, when you put it on top of water, it is sinking. If you are in a concrete, dense building, you don't get any reception because your phone can't receive cellular frequency. Your cellular frequency also is relevant to your body, because when you are too dense, you are disconnected from the light codes of the cosmic realm. Okay? Now, with that being said, when the further you incarnate or anchor yourself to the 3D, these third dimensional constructs, the further disconnected you are from who you are, your identity, your divinity. You forget these things. Sin is the state of lack that is a result of you forgetting. Okay? Now, as we move on, that sin entered the world. The sin, you are disconnected from your Akashic records. You have to work, most times by way of trauma and pressure, in order to remember who you are. This is the narcissistic spell, because remember, the narc and narcissist is the narcotic. That is the deep sleep and the numbing effect, which leads us to the death by sin. Because when you are numb and disconnected by way of that narcotic, which is the spell of you forgetting that you are the power, that you are divinity, it disconnects you. It causes a spiritual death. It puts the ISIS, narcissist, ISIS, to sleep. You can check out my video, make a note to check out my video on Life is But a Dream. I explain the science of this deep sleep in biblical terms and metaphysically. Now, with that being said, the death by sin means that you are, in a way, you incarnate spiritually dead. So, to deepen this sin of you being spiritually disconnected, your name, the name that your parents gave to you, is what furthered your third dimensional anchorage. Let me explain. God, we argue all the time in the metaphysical community. Who is God? The word God is only X and X years old, or the word God is a Greek or a Gnostic term for this or that. Jesus wasn't the real name, it was Yahweh or Yahshua or whatever you want to say, which I also broke down in a previous video. Takes us back to the word Hawa, which is Eve, Eve being the darkness of the cosmic womb. So, regardless of how you look at the word, you were talking about the source that exists within you. The spirit is just the unseen world. That is, the mother is the unseen. Right? Okay. Once you got your name became your identity. Then that anchored into your family, the titles that you have within your family: mother, father, sister, brother, auntie, uncle, cousin, right? This is the narcissistic spell, because a lot of us, black sheep, the enlightened or chosen ones, however you identify, as you go through the journey of your awakening, we know that our family and the people that are closest to us are the most detrimental to our frequency. Many of us associate narcissism only with family, some form of family, whether it is your mother, your father, your baby mama, or your baby daddy. We limit narcissism. Our first experience with narcissism was these familial entities. Those are all constructs of the 3D. One of the ways to break the narcissistic spell on your frequency is to disconnect yourself from your family. Because narcissism is an equation. Narcissism is like an instruction manual. Because once you crack the code and understand what narcissism is on a spiritual level, then you learn how to tap into that code through alchemy and escape these physical atrocities, escape the trauma and the patterns of toxicity. When we say we're breaking generational curses, we are breaking the narcissistic spells anchoring us to the 3D. And for many of us, it's the religious thinking that with family comes hierarchy. Family first. I'm a mother first. Bros before, you know what I'm saying? No, it's called a universe for a reason. It is the universe. You and I versed. Who is the I? The I am, the Christ, a realm of consciousness. So once you activate your soul by breaking the spell of the narcissist, this is what we work on in the Narcissist the Alchemist framework. Y'all go straight to revsahaja.com and start on the foundational course, Metaphysical Healing 101. Because I want you to have the fundamentals of the Narcissist the Alchemist Soul Activation Framework so that you can be ready for it. Because it's packed. It's packed. If you don't go through Metaphysical Healing 101, well, I'm not going to limit you, but there is a such thing as psychosis. When you take in too much information at once. So the matriarch circle is the way we divide that up into breadcrumbs until it becomes a supper. Okay? Keep that in mind. Because this is the key to our ascension. This is the key to the divine feminine. 9 meaning destruction. Once you alchemize that narcissistic experience, you rise. You become the embodiment of spiritual luxury. Because the Bible tells us that we are divinity. Ye are gods. Psalm 82:6. Okay? So this death is just our disconnection because now we live in a state of lack from forgetting. The state of lack for thinking we have to work towards pleasing our families. We don't want to. If I wouldn't have broken the narcissistic spell on my energy, I wouldn't even have become Rev Sahaj. I wouldn't have even started these platforms on TikTok, Facebook, IG, or YT. Because everything I talk about directly goes against everything that I was taught from the point of being a little kid. When I'm at those tables, I let them think that they are the key and the code. Because I'm not here to go to war with something I'm working towards rising above and exiting out of. My war is in my teachings. My war is in these metaphysical breakdowns. My war is in taking people who have pain and turning it into community so that through that community, they can generate wealth and luxury, which is the purpose of the Matriarch Circle Healing Community. Now, moving on to the next scripture, because if we're talking about the source being the mother, Psalm 58:3 drops it all on us. It says that the wicked are estranged from the womb, they go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. The wicked are estranged from the womb. So if you disconnected from the source that is within you, then you cannot be for the movement. You cannot be for the truth. This is the illusion behind people in the spiritual realm saying that the divine feminine is rooted in ego. No, ego is what prevents you from receiving the information. Because my breakdown of feminine has nothing to do with feminism. The feminine is the key to higher realms of consciousness. Once you tap into the feminine, you exist in dimensions where your name does not. Your name and your titles are a spell. Who are you? I am Bobby. I am Ashley. I am. No, you are not. You are energy. I am a man first. I am a woman. I am a. No, you are not. Right? As soon as you are disconnected from the source within, you begin speaking lies. Who you think you are is who you are not. Understand this. Because being born into sin just means you be forget. So when your parents give you a name, when you receive your name, you are being anchored to the third dimension. Remember, I said they trickle down, the sin trickles down from the first state of forgetting, parthenogenesis, woman forgetting her science, thinking she needs a man. Religion comes through thousands of years later and solidifies this and tells you that in order for you to be whole, you need a wife. You need to be wife and husband. The Bible demonizes the feminine. Feminine is just spirit. Let's break it down again. Feet, iron, oxygen, breath of life. Ma, men, the beginning of time. 9, destruction, the cycle of trauma necessary to remind you that you are divine. Masculine, ma, school line. You have to go to the school of the mother to regain access to higher realms of consciousness by way of the mind. So all of it is reconnecting you to the source. But identifying as that corporate entity only, not to say that you can't give your name meaning, but your name is, or your identity that's attached to your name, is part of what's disconnecting you from your divinity. You have to be everything and no thing. You have to be ego and spirit. Your ego is just your military defense system. Your ego is the one that transcribes your nervous system. The nervous system is operated by the spirit. That's why when you are in the vicinity, or when you are witness to, or in some way experiencing narcissism, you can feel it in your energy. You can feel it in your frequency. If you are one to do the doom scrolling, 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're upset, now you laughing, now you about to cry, you're being manipulated, spiritually manipulated. But your nervous system will make you aware of that through a psychological term called anxiety and depression. All of these, the science of all of these, is unlocked in the Narcissistic Alchemist framework. Go ahead and get on that VIP list, RevSahasha.com. Now, with all of this being said, of course, we are here to uproot ourselves from the third dimension. We are here to experience luxury, and to reconnect to that luxury is to connect with the Christ form of consciousness. Christ is just the crystals, the Kundalini energy. It crystallizes your pineal gland and turns it into a projector. Because once the light, the cosmic light hits it, then you are able to transcend the confinements of the third dimension. Anything that you want just appears. You want a healthy relationship? It is here. You want to wait, you want a $30,000 month? It is here. It's not about you waiting for things. It's not about you cycling through your trauma or your patterns in order for it to get here. It's about you understand at your core who you truly are, which is spirit. Because if you claim to be anything else, then you just, what Psalm 58 say? Speaking lies. So, with that being said, one of the main things that we have to do as a people is learn how to break these narcissistic spells on our energy, y'all. This is an energy thing. This is energy clearing. But those of you who have taken Metaphysical Healing 101, you know that this energy is being passed down through your ancestry. But because time is a construct of the 3D, and you have the ability to transcend the time you are in currently in order to heal generations before you by raising your frequency, by reconnecting with the inner child, Christ energy, then you know you are one with your divinity. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't work towards anything? Does that mean that you should go totally off grid, grow your hair out, and start looking raggedy? No. This is meant to empower you to be the embodiment of luxury. This is what is breaking the narcissistic spell that causes your dis-ease. This is connected to your chakra system. Your chakras are connected to the organs. And all of that is ruled by light codes, light and sound, which are sinusoidal sin waveforms. So once there is distortion in your harmony, then your spirit cannot be. You lose oxygen. Once you lose oxygen or you are low in that iron, you can't materialize or magnetize because you don't have that life force. But guess who does? The narcissist, mostly by way of religion. That's why the Bible tells us not to be superstitious, which means don't expect your Savior to be an external being. Don't expect your Savior, especially once you get wind of Psalm 82:6, Numbers 11:14. Don't think that the resources that you need aren't already within you, ready to be activated. You are the code, you are the alchemist. But the trauma that you've endured, this trauma that has been passed down for centuries, is anchoring you to a timeline where you don't know how to truly access your divinity. This is why your triggers are key. Your triggers is your spirit through your nervous system telling you it's time to choose, make another decision, make a better decision. Is this the reality that you want to continue living in? It's all a matter of perception or consciousness. But your inability to remember that is the sin. So we know that the narcissist is a vacuum. The narcissist feeds on that life force because it is void of it. Then when we equally are void, not only do we attract it, but it impacts the journey. It makes more struggling or more traumatic the experiences that lead us to our remembrance. And a lot of times, in order to heal that, you have to surround yourself with the opposite. The importance of your healing journey is not just to learn how to be isolated or experience yourself, to be by yourself, because a lot of us don't know how to do that because we're so used to being surrounded with other people's energy. The idea is for you to find your tribe through community. Because when you align with others who are on a parallel journey, when you guys all have the same goals in mind, all of that energy is like adding fuel to a fire. And we know that the fire is the soul because the sun is the solar body that dominates our cosmic system. The soul is the outward expression of the internal source, which is the spirit, aka feminine. So again, this has nothing to do with gender, because if you think that you are a woman or man, then you are in a narcissistic state of forgetting, because you are not the body. You are not your 3D identity. When your parents gave you a name, they made you a corporate entity. What did they tell you it means to be a corporate entity? Well, when you check the box of your demographics, if you are one to identify as your blackness, then that means by law you are spiritually dead. But blackness, if we break down the word, black, lack, ba meaning spirit, lack meaning sin. So it's not that you're not supposed to be calling yourself black. Black meaning dead in corporate law means that you participating in that system is further anchoring you to this dimension, artificial constructs. So now I bet as a black man or woman, you likewise believe in racism. All of these are state of consciousness. So when you align with the feminine, the reason there is a fee in feminine is not just because of the oxygen, but the fee is also the cost to access higher realms of consciousness, to buy your way out of the third dimension. What is a third dimensional construct? Racism, poverty, oppression, trauma, abuse, spiritual disconnection. Returning yourself to the source, which is your heart chakra, because your heart chakra is your body's largest energy force. You can look this up. The heart chakra gives off the most energy in your body. That is you returning to the source. But the heart chakra is also green, just like money. Money isn't just a physical aspect of currency. Money is also the unseen, your frequency. So, in order for you to transcend the physical realm, in order for you to see beyond gender wars, politics, and all these other constructs, you have to become whole within first. Then, if you want to attract someone likewise whole in and of themselves, then you can do that and not have to sacrifice aspects of what you think you have to lack in order to achieve balance in your partnerships. It should be 100 and 100%. All of that, one day I got 17, the next day you bring 83, BS. Because once you exit the third dimension, you are not bound by the frequency of the narcissist. The narcissist is a spell. When we talk about generational curses on our finances, on our relationships, this is it. It is your mindset. Being broke is a state of consciousness. You have to understand that. If you truly want to live in that split, if you truly want to be in heaven or the third dimension or whatever you want to call it, if you want to redeem yourself from the sickness of sin, then you have to restore your consciousness to its harmonious state of the feminine, which is your spirit, which is water at its highest frequency, right? So, this fee, if you can afford this fee, then you can more frequently gain access to higher realms or dimensions of existence. Frequency, the frequency of which you're able to exist on higher levels. You know how you can have those aha moments? How you can get this creative buzz? You can be in such high energy at some point, and then you start to work to try and find where you were when you felt that, when you were where were you energetically in that moment? Because you can't afford the cost to more frequently access that energy, because you are disconnected through sin or the lack that exists spiritually. So the whole purpose behind the narcissistic alchemist framework, the whole purpose behind the matriarch circle community with the foundational course on metaphysical healing is learning how to take your trauma, learning how to take your pain and make it profitable for you, turning your traumas into commas, turning your energy into currency, generating wealth, rebuilding yourself, redeeming your mental, physical, and spiritual health. So, the difference between, to go back to what we stated in the beginning, the difference between millionaires and billionaires and the people we like to think are destroying our world is that within them, they are the source. And who do we refer to as the source? But God. If you are God, then you have the wealth that it takes to afford to be alive spiritually, because money is a form of current frequency, energy, and money are all synonymous. To have high energy is to resonate at the heart chakra. Your default is the heart chakra. So if you resonate at the heart chakra, which non coincidentally is green, then you can afford to access luxury. But you have to break the narcissistic spell on your mindset and alchemize that trauma so that you can reach that state of consciousness. Because hating people who have wealth is likewise disconnecting you from it. These are all narcissistic spells. So, what I want you guys to take away from today is learn to be balanced in the way that you perceive things. Learn how to view a thing spiritually and physically. This is the metaphysics of critical thinking. But overall, the whole entire goal of this way of thinking is for you to wake up and realize that the kingdom of heaven is your energy. Now, the last thing I want to do is break that down to the phonetics. We're going to break down the kingdom of heaven phonetically. King is key, key is spirit, dome is the womb, and heaven is a mindset. So, how do we access the kingdom of heaven, you ask? Within. And as always, peace, love, wellness, and divine feminine knowledge. Make sure you like and subscribe and join that VIP list. Until next time, peace. Sundays with Sahaja is brought to you by Ray of Sahaja. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, and become a subscriber. For courses, books, community, private sessions, or to invite me to speak, visit rayofsahaja.com and connect with me on my other platform. And above all, live well and stay young.